Hey, how's it going? So, we're looking here at class 4 for the book Guiding Readers and Writers. Some of you like this book, some of you have said it's too dense. I'd like to comment on this. I think it's a good book because it has a lot of ideas, but the density of the ideas is definitely there. Now, compared to the other two main books that we've seen already, those are based on anecdotes. They've got scripts. They've got strategy number one, strategy number two. It's nice and clear, and you can flow through those. And a lot of it's based on personal experience with, anecdotes. This one doesn't have any anecdotes. So I can understand why it'll be difficult, but I still think that I want to point out some things, that we should point out some things in this book and see how it's related to and supplements and says other things. So anyways, today was just page 311 to 321. There's some stuff in here I wanted to point out. Now, the idea of solving words, talk about the unconscious process of reading, and this is interesting because in the previous reading we looked at, in the other reading for today, the idea of like trying to teach comprehension, it's stuff that you can't really be like, well, eventually they'll just get it. That's what most teachers hope. But in this case, this is a lot of the idea of, strategies for teaching comprehension. And the other book, I think, lays it out better than this one, in this case, yes. But this book on page 311 has a lot of interesting ideas about how the words are solved unconsciously. It could be consciously, it could be explicitly or implicitly done. But top of 311 on the right, using meaning and language of the text along with the print information, attend to the visual features needed to solve the word quickly, recognize, words, and these are strategies obviously for that independent readers have, and the idea of moving people from dependent readers into being independent readers are teaching them some of these strategies. The idea of the bringing prior information into the reading, people's own experience. I like what they say over here on page 316 on the bottom right. It says, we recognize the universals of human experience. No two people live the same life, and therefore no two people can interpret a text exactly the same way. So that's pretty interesting. But the idea of making connections. 316 bottom left, students bring their understanding about texts and authors to every new textual experience. And that's super important about, building on this understanding of life experience and other texts that you've read. And that helps you understand, gives you the background information to be able to self-scaffold and build up from there. Page 312, step back a couple pages, systems of strategies for processing text. Yes, it's not as explicit as the other one, as the other, strategy 1, strategy 2, but I think it's pretty clear here. Definition explains it. Readers need to. Teachers help readers learn how to. Recognize known words. It doesn't tell you here, you need to tell the students to recognize known words. You have to read that text and kind of pull stuff out of it. Combine word-solving strategies in flexible ways. Use language and text meaning to gain individual word meaning. Use language redundancy for efficient word reading. Yeah, some of these are more, are more obvious than others. Use language redundancy for efficient word reading. Repetition of key words. So, they'll be learned. You repeat people's names, you remember them. If you repeat words, you'll remember them. So this moves on to page 313, and I'd like you to take a look at that if you can kind of go through the right-hand page there, and just the right-hand column, and just kind of fish through there and see if there's some things in there that you're able to take from it. Page 314, the idea of self-correction. This is important also. Like people correct their own errors. Sometimes people say, oh, that's not right, but they keep going. They just recognize that it's, that there's an incompetency there, but they don't actually self-correct it. So, but that's the first step to correcting it, is recognizing it, right? So this whole idea of understanding, having a base of information of understanding. It says on here, page 314 on the right, 2/3 of the way down, a reader who can access knowledge of how different texts are organized has a better idea of how and where to look for the information he needs or she needs. So, understanding about texts, not just like different types of text. What's an essay like? What's a scientific article like? What is a newspaper article, right? In a newspaper article, you've got all the information on the top, on the rubric there, and then the farther you go down, the less information it is. Obviously an essay paper is tell them what you're going to tell them what you told them. So, a lot of the time you can jump to conclusion in order to find out what's happening, because the introduction is sometimes not as good as the conclusion. If you got a scientific paper, you jump to the abstract. If you have, a book, you jump to the table of contents. You go to the back. So that's it's good to teach kids about different texts also. And I like this idea of reading out loud on page 315. I mean, I'm sure a lot of you do this, but the idea successful readers read fluently. When they read aloud, they sound like good readers because their voices rise and fall and use appropriate pitch, stress words effectively to convey meaning, and pause appropriately. When I teach public speaking classes, we work on this all the time, and it's great strategies to hear for that, because when the students just go, and Jill went up the hill, and then she brought down some things, and everyone was like, hey, good job with that. It's just monotone. It sounds terrible. But the idea of using, punctuation and pauses really makes it more lively and real, and shows that the student understands the text. On page 316, strategies for expanded meaning. This is connected to the other readings. So I don't really want to go through this too much, but page 317 and 318, this is great. A lot of information here. It takes it a step further about analyzing. Analyze the whole text to determine how illustrations, text, format, and can communicate meaning in an integrated way. It's really dense. There's a lot of stuff in here, but it supplements to what we're saying. The idea of synthesizing too. Synthesizing, it's not covered, I don't think, in the other texts. If it is, it's not as covered as well as it is here. Readers also synthesize information from the text. They reconfigure so they can add to it and integrate it into their own stories of knowledge, personal, world, and literary. And the questions they ask are, and they're listed on page 319. I thought that was particularly interesting, the idea of synthesizing and summarizing too. The idea of summarizing. When you summarize a text, you don't just want to summarize everything. You need to summarize key details and the main points. So the whole idea of work in summaries, hopefully, we'll be able to work on in the future also.